Red Wings are not going to send anybody to the box. Now they will. Take a certain risk if you hold off putting a guy over there. Normally on a minor, you'll do that. Sometimes on coincidentals, they'll cut you some slack if a player is injured, not having to have one there right away. Up with this is Brindamore. Brindamore handing it across, and it's shuffled back for Dan Quinn, who's fresh from some repairs himself. Stevens steps right into Mark Potvin. All the way down it goes for Riendo to steer off now for Jeff Brown. Brown connecting with Stevens. 11:35 to go, second period. 4-1 the score. The Blues ahead in this game. We hope you're enjoying our telecast tonight from the arena in St. Louis. Along with Bill Clement, yours truly, Mike Emmerich. Series is 3-1 Detroit, but this game 4-1 the Blues. Brown with a shot snagged there by Cheveldae. Turned right back over for Potvin. Lays it ahead for Mark Habscheid. Eyed up by Brown. The feed was away from Primo. Primo shoulders with Stevens, and Primo found the glass. Back up with this is Dan Quinn again. Big blast from 80 feet. Knuckleballed some. But Cheveldae handled, and that becomes shot 23 on goal by the Blues in this period 7. And the Red Wings have only had 2. We've played nearly half the period. Paul Cavallini steps ahead with it for the Blues. Has Adam Oates nearby. Hands over to Hull. That one spun back in. Bumped to the corner by Cheveldae. Turned back off, and Hull in front had it poked off by Cheveldae. And it Potvin with a pass ahead. Chase on bump to the boards. Still they battle for it. Probert shoving with Tomlinson now. Across it comes for Garth Butcher. Butcher leads one ahead. Off of Chason stick it goes. Oates held back for a moment by Miller as Chason got enough time from that. Played it along for Probert, who stepped into a man. Butcher a shot, and that one blocked away. Paul Cavallini moves in. Fires, and that one knocked down. Rebound, Sutter sent it wide. Centered in front, off of Cheveldae, and he nearly tipped it in himself. He has the presence of mind to hold on and get a stoppage of play. Oh, it was rattling around like a pinball in front, and off of Cheveldae himself.
Well, where do we start on this replay? Adam Oates just about had one leg sheared off at the knee, stopping one of Paul Cavallini's big drives. I don't know how Cheveldae stopped the final shot from Paul Cavallini that led to this face-off. Adam Oates and Brett Hull all over the place in this game, and now that Fedorov has left the tilt, you got to imagine that Hull and Oates will even have more room.
I think Cheveldae saw the one that ricocheted off his skates. It was bouncing around in front, but he sure looked down quickly and had the presence of mind to seal it. That's a little fake move there by Paul Cavallini back and forth. Get a chance to see this in just a moment.
You sure? Cavallini's shot after he had hit Oates. This was his second big blast. They went over to the side. Oates dumped it in front, and Cavallini right there with the jam. I mean, the puck was there waiting for him. I think Cheveldae must have just opened up his catching glove as Cavallini was trying to jam it home.
8-2 shots in the period. 4-1 St. Louis ahead if you're just joining us. Here's Hall. Cranks one, and it went wide. Jeff Brown with a drive. Cheveldae reached for that, but it was off the mark. Stevens stepped into, puck flicked in front. Gino Cavallini was tied up on the play by Racine. Puck flipped off of Oates and scooped back out by the Red Wings, who find themselves counter-punching in this one, as they have really since Hull broke a 1-1 tie, 4:58 into the first. Now Adam Oates controlling. Deals it back off for Gino Cavallini. Rammed though by Racine. Along near Sean Burr. Burr checked his man. That was Jeff Brown. Puck came to Gino Cavallini again. Tied up by Burr. Gets back up to play again, and Burr right on him. Oates comes by 2. Stepped into by Zombo, but he's loose and walks right in. Backhander, score!
Well, the hats have begun to fly here at the St. Louis Arena. Adam Oates has just collected his third goal to give the St. Louis Blues a 5-1 lead. And as this game moves along, Adam Oates seems to be getting bigger and bigger, and so does Brett Hull. Hull's really the unsung hero on this goal. Yves Racine, number 33 of Detroit, had a choice to make. I mean, Hull was in the slot. Oates was heading towards the net. Racine decided to take Hull. That left this much room for Adam Oates to break to the front of the net. Went all the way by Tim Chevrolet until Chevrolet was down. He made it look easy, and it has been easy for the St. Louis Blues tonight for the first time in this series.
First ever playoff hat trick for Adam Oates. And the first ever playoff hat trick for any of the active roster of the Blues.
Boy, did he put a move on Tim Chevrolet. He froze him with a little fake to the forehand side and then pulled to the backhand. Where those hats go? Maybe we can wheel down there after the tilt and get ourselves a couple for the hot summer sun.
I gave up wearing those over the summer. The fancier ones. 25 shots by St. Louis. We welcome those of you who have just joined us from Sports Channel Ohio. You're watching now a team from just to your north. The Detroit Red Wings take on the St. Louis Blues. And this is the kind of atmosphere and the kind of Blues dominance that a lot of people forecast would take place in the first two games, both of them here. The Detroit won the first, lost the second, and the Blues have just dominated here in Game 5. We have scrap going not only at center ice, but one about to break out back near the Detroit goal. This is Mark Potvin, who had almost 50 fights in the American League, tangling at center ice, and Bob Probert was just about to go with one of the Blues at the other end when first the linesman and then the referee stepped in.
You know, Dave Lowry actually dropped the gloves and went first on this one. I've expected Mark Potvin to let her rip at least 10 times in this series. Hasn't happened. Finally, he ended up with a fight, but he didn't start it. It was Dave Lowry. So penalties to both sides. The Blues with a chokehold now, 5-1 over the Red Wings.
To help relieve her heartburn, her antacid uses aluminum and magnesium, but his is Tums, and Tums has calcium.
Something my body needs anyway. I like that.
Old Spice, Sports Channel America, and The National present the Fans' Choice for MVP. To vote, dial 1-900-896-2333. Know your MVP's team and jersey number. The winners will be featured on Sports Channel America. Call 1-900-896-2333.
At the Olympic Saddle Dome in Calgary, on the power play, Gary Suter over to Al McInnes. A power play goal. Flames lead the Oilers 1-0 in the first. Meanwhile, in Chicago, the North Stars go up 2. Mark Tenorti with the goal beats Ed Belfour. 2-0 North Stars in the second.
Penalties are to Potvin and Lowry. Slashing and roughing minors. Mark Tenorti has just made the score at Chicago Stadium 2-0. Al McInnes has collected a power play goal at Calgary. Their backs are to the wall tonight, but they have the early lead over the Edmonton Oilers, 1-0 in the first period there. Here, St. Louis dominates. Oates with a hat trick. Gino Cavallini and Hall got the assist on Oates' third of the night, fourth of the playoffs at 10:33.
I wonder how many people, even in their wildest dreams, entertained the notion of a Minnesota-Detroit final in the Norris Division. The two top teams in hockey this season, during the regular season, were the Chicago Blackhawks and the St. Louis Blues.
Glenn Featherstone off this draw, checked high and hard by Yzerman, but ahead comes Rich Sutter. Can't beat it across. Dallas in the way. Right back on for Yzerman again. Met by Merwan, wrapped up. Yzerman escapes. Nice move. Quick shot. And that one held by Riendo as Doug Crossman was the trailer on the play and just took it and whipped it toward the goal.
It looks like Brian Murray is going to have a lot of protection out there for Steve Yzerman. With the Blues leading 5-1, he has to make sure that Yzerman stays healthy, especially with Fedorov having left the game. That was Yzerman to Doug Crossman and an easy save for Riendo. But Randy McKay and Bob Probert on this last shift were patrolling the wings for Steve Yzerman.
Riendo in a bounce-back mode again, as he was after the first game of this series. Said, I let the team down, but I'm going to show him. In the second game, he certainly did. But then 2 games in Detroit, in which he faced countless 3-on-1s, 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s, and breakaways. and quick shots off of faceoffs. That was another concern of Brian Sutter, losing faceoffs and seeing the opposition get a chance right off it. Not too many concerns for Brian Sutter at this phase of the game. 8.5 to go in the second period, and his team ahead here on home ice by 4. 5-1 is the score. Chase on to Zombo. And it is the Red Wings who've been the reeling, counter-punching sort of team that they forced St. Louis to be in 3 of the previous 4 contests. It is Chason leading it ahead. Has Jimmy Carson nearby. Sends it off for Fettig, but Riendo just whips it right back. Lifted high by Paul Cavallini. Chason will go back to get it. Chason spins, flips one off Kelly Chase. Butcher along with that. Flips back for Chase, followed up by Brindamore. Dipped back in again on the backhand. Cheveldae just scoops it along. Fettig waiting for it. Blues in the midst of a change. They have Hall out once more. It is Scott Stevens laying it across for Butcher. 7:45. Good pass. Gino Cavallini. A shot is off Cheveldae and then deflected wide by Zombo, but all of that called back. 26 shots for St. Louis and just 8. 3 in this period for Detroit.
You know, one of the luxuries now that Brian Sutter has, doesn't have to move Adam Oates and Brett Hall around. The 2 games in Detroit, games 3 and 4, he had to try and spring them loose, so he not only played them together, but he played them apart. He put them on different line combinations, so many that I think people got dizzy trying to count them. Now that St. Louis has the lead and the way Brett Hall and Adam Oates are playing, he can simply keep them together and play Detroit straight away.
Hall back on for Gino Cavallini. We welcome those of you from Sports Channel New England who have just joined our telecast here from the arena in St. Louis. 5-1. St. Louis facing elimination is ahead in this game as Oates takes it from Gino Cavallini. Oates with a hat trick. Hall with a goal. Going for 2. Shoots one in front that's tipped aside off of Cavallini. Hall again. Sends it right back for Brown. This one flourished behind now. Moving with it is Oates. Out for Hall, and he spiked it wide. Boy, Cheveldae and his nightmares in thinking about what this series might unfold in front of him has to be thinking of the way the traffic's been generated in this game, and you've seen a good example of that. Thus, those of you who've just joined us on this last shift.
When you fall behind, Mike, and especially when you fall behind by 4 goals, pretty well the first thing that goes is the hitting game. That is something that Detroit really thrived on in the 2 games at home that they played. But here, I mean, it was early. As soon as St. Louis took the lead, Detroit led in this game, believe it or not, for a little while on Bobby Dallas's goal. But as soon as St. Louis took the lead, it really seemed to take the hit out of the Red Wings. Finally, the play was stopped on this one, but Adam Oates and Brett Hall have been standing up with lots of room every time they've come across the blue line.
That was kind of why I asked the question about Hall's goal as sparkling as it was, because all of a sudden it seemed like Detroit was gone, and there were 5 minutes that passed before St. Louis widened the lead to 2 goals at 3-1.
Well, the Red Wings knew it would be difficult in here. You know, you think that a team is so focused and so mentally ready to play in the playoffs that 1 goal, no matter how it is scored, really can't throw you off your game. That may have happened, but it may just be St. Louis's night here. They may have been ready to dominate no matter what Detroit did.
2 aside, continue the battle. Along with it is Zombo. Has to turn away from the traffic generated by Rich Sutter and connects back on with Steve Yzerman. Moving ahead with Chason. Yzerman coasts in. Still has Chason nearby, but couldn't control adequately, and Rich Sutter stepped into him. Now Chason waits, fires a shot, sticks Riendo, and right there to clear it away, Paul Cavallini. McKay missed for Probert. Instead got Garth Butcher. Butcher able to step ahead with this one. Ran into Yzerman, but was able to muscle it back down. Clock down to 6 minutes to go here in the second period. Probert kicks to control, hands it back up for McKay. Away from Kimball. McKay can't get any further. Brindamore, nice finesse move on Zombo. Brindamore with an opening. Moves in and feeds one across, but Ron Wilson had already been canceled out. They battle on the boards for it. Yzerman trying to kick it away and then lift it. Now on second effort does, and Randy McKay says, okay, let's go. And a couple of heavyweights, McKay and Kimball.
Boy, look out. Kimball with the left and McKay
guys had 20 fights during the course of the season. Oh.
Well, that left landed from Darren Kimball.
Ladies and gentlemen, there will be no minor penalties on this one.
Each year, the experts at Car and Driver look at over 100 cars, so you don't have to. From the current new cars, they just picked their 10 best. At the most, you'll probably only buy one of them. That's too bad, because 2 of the 10 best are Mercury's. Mercury Sable and Mercury Tracer LTS. All this in the quality of a Mercury.
On Calgary's first goal on Al McInnes' shot, Terry Wilson, number 33, caused a nice screen in front of Grant Fuhr. This time he deflects Gary Suter's shot. Power play goal, 2-0 Flames in the first.
Well, it sounds like Darren Kimball is going to get an extra 2 on this one. McKay has received 5. Kimball's got 5 and 2. High sticking the extra 2 to Kimball. That's a pretty good test for Randy McKay's arm as well. He came back to action in Detroit in this series. He had severed a couple of tendons in his forearm and his right arm back in January, and it was doubtful that Randy McKay would ever even play again, let alone so early. Brian Murray was telling us this morning that he didn't plan on McKay playing at all this season, if ever again. That's how close McKay came to severing nerves in his arm as well, but looked like it held up pretty well against Kimball.
Kimball got 7, and with 5:39 to go, he departed to the cheers of the fans. McKay just got the single fighting major. So Detroit has had now their 4th successive power play in this period. But they haven't generated a thing. This is their 4th power play, and in the period they've had 4 shots. When it goes south on you, it really goes south, and tonight Detroit is tasting what St. Louis felt earlier in this series. Some frustrations on their power play.
Think they've crossed Argentina yet?
Close. They're in the mountains. Crossman lays it back across for Racine. Connects for Habscheid. Then Bob Probert dealt it to the corner. Back to get this is Stevens. Wheels one off that will go all the way back down. North Stars just building a lead on the Chicago Blackhawks. Calgary doing the same on Edmonton. A review of all that coming up for you between periods. 5:10 to go in the second. Blues ahead here decisively 5-1. Yzerman flips one in front, cut off by Butcher, floated right back down. Shift change on. Adam Oates comes out to be a member of the short-handed squad along with Basson, and it remains Butcher and Stevenson back. Yves Racine brings it on for Detroit. Connects back over with Yzerman. The drop over for Habscheid. Yzerman again behind the net. Crossman in deep right at the front. There's no one at the opposite point, but it's worked out for Racine's drive, and that one blocked away to the corner. Headed right over for it is the guy who blocked it, Bob Basson. Butcher pokes it along. Yzerman there to get it. Tried to float it through Butcher, and that didn't work. Bob Probert rammed Basson after he had cleared the puck down, and now we have a skirmish along the boards.
You know, if Bob Probert wants to get into it, this is how it's going to have to happen. Otherwise, he's going to get tagged from Dan Maruelli. He's kind of a marked man. But you get into the clinches and into the board stuff like this, and that's where Probert's going to be able to start something and get away with it. Habscheid and Stevens are locked up. Probert and Basson.
Our prediction has held true. It's lopsided, and it's turning Surly. 4:24 to go in the second. 5-1 the home team.
What is refreshing? It's the taste. The taste that could only come from a cold blue light right out of the ice. Now that's refreshing.
The North Stars piling it on in Chicago. Brian Bellows over to Dave Gagne. Try once, try twice, get the goal, his third. Then 30 seconds later, Bellows will take the shot. Veteran Bobby Smith bangs it home. Ed Belfour is out. Dominic Hasek is in. North Stars in control.
Bill talked about the play on the boards. The officials have been told you call hits from behind that look like that. But there was more that came out of it.
Boy, that evened out, didn't it? Stevens for roughing.
Robert got a roughing penalty. So Detroit still has the power play. Well, I thought Probert would almost automatically come up with one for the hit from behind, because when a guy goes violently into the boards from a hit from behind, the referees have been told you got to call that. Such an easy situation in which to incur an injury. But these penalties have canceled with 4:24 to go in the second period.
Well, Randy McKay doesn't look too wound up, does he? We have not heard how Sergei Fedorov is. He left the game a little earlier in this period after having Mario Marois jammed into him. After Marois was run into the boards by Randy McKay. Fedorov looked groggy as he left the ice, but the task is huge for Detroit, even with Sergei Fedorov out here. It's close to impossible without him. 5-1 with the Blues leading, and Steve Yzerman really doesn't look very effective here tonight, Mike. He hasn't really carried the puck at all. He hasn't generated scoring chances. And I can tell when Steve Yzerman is on top of his game because he buys time. He carries the puck through the neutral zone, crosses the blue line, and is able to wheel and deal and give his wingers enough time to get the defensive coverage to break down away from the play. I haven't seen him do that at all tonight.
He's out there right now, and he's in opposite Ron Wilson for the faceoff. You saw an even more surprising score. I think the Blues were expected in many people's minds to stage quite a comeback here tonight and at least show what everyone had thought they had at the start of this series, and they've done just that. But Minnesota with a 4-0 lead on the Chicago Blackhawks at Chicago Stadium. After some skirmishing in the warm-up in Game 4 at Minnesota. That series even at 2 games apiece. Yzerman trying to fish it in deep, but there to get it is Jeff Brown, just laces it off the wall. Chason tries a difficult one-time keep and can't. Wilson on now for Lowry. Lowry tries to get by. Primo was back helping, but here's Paul Cavallini with a shot that is stopped by Cheveldae. He thought it might have trickled behind, but he's able to hang on. 3 seconds left on a Detroit power play.
You know, even shorthanded, the St. Louis Blues defensemen have been so much more involved in the offensive end of things in this hockey game. Coming into tonight's game in this series, the Detroit defensemen had scored 6 goals. St. Louis only had 1, and Jeff Brown had scored that one, but Paul Cavallini blasted one home in this tilt. He got the 5th Blues goal. He got the 4th Blues goal. Just about had himself another one right there. But to me, that is one of the biggest surprises in this series, is the contributions both defensively and offensively, before tonight's game at least, by the Red Wings defense. Zombo scored a goal. Brad McCrimmon scored a goal here in Game 1. Chason has 3 goals. And they had been tight defensively up until Game 5 here tonight.
The Red Wings in the regular season only got 9% of their goals from their defensemen. But here in the playoffs, counting Dallas's goal tonight, they've scored 18 and had 7 coming from the defense as a shot by Featherstone, blocked away by Cheveldae. Penalty time is up to the Blues. That extra minor that was tacked on to Kimball. This one flipped right in on goal by Marois, and Cheveldae had to steer that one aside. 14-4, the shots in the period. 30-9 in the game, St. Louis. Kevin Miller up with this, starts the rush back out for the Red Wings. Watched by Marois, tries to finesse by, does, but lost control as he was wedged out by Featherstone, and Miller is hurt now. Whistle blown and play stopped. And again, a Red Wing has to get some help.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if Dan Maruelli calls anything, because he was right behind the play, didn't put his arm up, and it took Miller going down in apparent pain to get him to blow the play down. And you could see a stick, looked like it grazed him on the side of the face. Who's going back there to get him? Is it Featherstone? No, but it was a stick that caught him before he actually went down.
Grazed a little maybe, but seems to be all right. Kevin Collins coming over, the linesman having something to say to Dan Marawelli. Everything seems to be okay. So a face-off to occur near Riendeau with 3:10 to go in the second period. If you're just joining us, Oates with a hat trick, Hull and Paul Cavallini, the goal scorers for St. Louis. Bobby Dallas, the lone Red Wings goal, and that was the first one of the game. And it looked as though Detroit was coiled and ready to get another. Riendeau made a big save on a 2-on-1 break that the Red Wings had. And then on came the St. Louis machine that had been dormant for so long. Chevalier punches this one away. Zombo took the hit from Gino Cavallini. Tried to feed Perfettic. This one cut off by Oates. Taken down by Habscheid. Puck skipped along for Zombo. Flips one for Fettick. Followed up by the Red Wings again, and Dallas able to start away. Back checked away by Hull, and he just works it back to Marois, then to Featherstone. 2:35 to go in the second. St. Louis up by 4. Zombo cuts that pass, steers it on for Burr. Playing neutral ice right now, and a little scrambly. Dallas watched by Adam Oates. Oates and Hull both in a forechecking role that time. Burr with a pass ahead. This one tipped loose by Fettick, spun back out by Tomlinson, and the Red Wings will go back to get it. Squibbs right near Chevalier on its edge, and so played by Crossman. Doug Crossman's pass chipped loose off of Primo, followed up by Crossman, tripped up. Quickly the arm of Dan Marawelli comes up. The Blues will be penalized in Detroit to get their 5th successive power play in the period. A period in which they have had only 4 shots on goal. And in the minor that was assessed to Kimball, they didn't get a shot at all.
Tripping is the call on Dan Quinn. Pretty straightforward call on this one. Right there. And you know, with the lead, which is something we pointed out in the first period, St. Louis has hardly had in this series, they're able to put their forechecking together a little differently. Now they got a big enough lead they can play it just about any way they want. But you know, in this last couple of minutes, we've seen Detroit try to move through the neutral zone only to bog down every time. St. Louis, when they have the lead, will usually pull back on their forechecking. Unless they've got a real good chance at a turnover, they will only send one guy. And what they'll do is they'll collapse back into the neutral zone with at least 4 men. Well, with all that traffic in there, it's hard to penetrate. Detroit is a team that's reluctant to dump and chase. They like to score on the rush and to carry through the neutral zone. Yzerman does. Fedorov, when he's playing, does. So does Jimmy Carson. So that's one of the advantages St. Louis finally has in this hockey game that they have not had in the series. They're able to play to their strength in a lot of ways and really take away what Detroit wants to do, and that is move the puck on the rush through the neutral zone and attack the blue line on the rush.
Third best defensive team in the league came into tonight, 14th out of the 16 teams in, but this will help their average as well as their confidence the way that they're playing in this one tonight. And they have such checking skills that they're so strong when they have a lead like this one. They play so well with a lead, and there are a lot of reasons for it. Miller pivoting away from the forechecking of Lowry. Miller with a pass ahead, kicked by Yzerman, picked up by Butcher, floated back in deep. We've seen in these playoffs how teams will do a lot of things out of character that they didn't do in the regular season, and their performance will change. I imagine it follows that individual players change at playoff time sometimes, surprisingly out of character too. Butcher flicks one back out. Chevalier back for a little tap onto Crossman, wedges one off the glass, and it's picked up by Miller right along for Yzerman. Moves up with Chason. Yzerman to the slot, shovels one, save Riendeau, rebound. Still they scrap for it. Probert tussling there with Stevens, and finally Riendeau able to reach out and grab and hold on. That's no change for Probert, nor is it for Stevens. Those aren't a couple of the guys I was thinking about when I was thinking about character change.
Probert kind of played possum on this play. He was standing there with Stevens hanging on him. He had his head down almost as if he was hurt. As soon as Stevens let up on him, boom, he exploded up with a little left-hand shot under the chin, it looked like. That's as much room as Steve Yzerman has had in this game, and it's taken a power play for him to cross the blue line, move to a shooting position, and get a shot away. I still don't think he got the snap away that he wanted. See, when he crosses here, St. Louis just collapsed back in. He got decent shot away, but it didn't seem to have the snap that an Yzerman wrist shot or snap shot from that area usually has. When his fighting was continuing in front, you see Bob Probert right there with his head down. He stayed like that for a good 4 or 5 seconds, and all of a sudden came out of it and woke up with a straight uppercut.
Now, we were told that Yzerman was limping the last shift of the Game 4 in Detroit. And it was speculated that it was his right knee, and in a situation like that, he would probably have quite a bit of weight on his right knee for a shot like that, wouldn't he?
Yeah, but when you're in the heat of the battle, those things hardly make a difference. And Yzerman, to me, was even limping this morning when he walked into the building, but he hasn't really shown that many effects of a banged-up knee. And he mentioned earlier that he was never classified as doubtful for this one, even though he did get banged up, and he's getting a lot of ice time now that Fedorov is out.
We remember his courageous return from a right knee problem in third round in 1988 against the Edmonton Oilers. This one wrapped around, up with it is Carson, then Primo. Tried to get it to the back, but that spiked loose by Wilson. Works it through Lowry in the last 20 seconds of this power play to the Red Wings. 22 seconds to go in the period. If you're just joining us, 5-1 in favor of St. Louis. Ahead it comes now for Yzerman, moving along with Jimmy Carson. Way offside was Primo, and so things break down again on the Detroit power play, which has gotten just one shot, and that was the one from Yzerman on this man advantage. Their 5th successive one in the period. Shots are 30-10, St. Louis.
I think Keith Primo still is learning a lot about pro hockey, learning a lot about the NHL, and learning a lot about Steve Yzerman. One thing that has to register when Yzerman comes to the blue line, respect his ability with the puck and don't go offside. Primo just made a beeline on the left side, was going to rocket in, expected to get it from Steve Yzerman, but you can't force the superstars. You have to wait till they're ready to give it to you, because you know what? Their instincts are better than yours. They'll know when to give it to you more than you'll know when you should get it.
To the last 3 seconds of the period. Riendo dumps it off. Zombo comes along to step into Bass, and they stare at one another. Quinn comes in for a little extra one, too. But quietly, this period comes to a close. 5-1 St. Louis at the end of 2.
We need a gimmick.
Gimmicks and beer.
Like a lime.
Nah, that's already taken by Mexico.
Apple and beer.
Yeah, it's a state fruit and it cleans your teeth.
How about an egg?
Too much cholesterol.
Now, hot jalapeno pepper. Oh! Kill me! Croutons?
To L.A.
Hi, big boy.
This is too weird.
Come on, run with this. It's different. I've got it. Umbrellas. Get it? Dry, Rainier.
We're geniuses.
Pretty cool, huh?
Call the brewery.
I-R-S. Those 3 letters have been on everyone's mind during the last few weeks, but this weekend only, IRS means incredible savings at Harris Ford. Yes, it's Harris Ford's once-a-year inventory reduction sale. Over $2 million in top-quality used vehicles, all marked way below market value, some below wholesale. Make the used car buying the weekend at Harris Ford, 200th and Highway 99, Linwood.
Stanley Cup playoff game on Sports Channel America is brought to you by Mercury. See the exciting new line of 1991 Mercury automobiles at your Lincoln Mercury dealer. Nothing moves you like a Mercury. By Sneaker Tamers. Sneaker Tamers insoles tame ferocious sneaker odor with the world's most powerful odor destroyer, activated charcoal. And by Asics, athletic shoes featuring shock-absorbing gel. Tonight's Stanley Cup playoff game on Sports Channel America is brought to you by Miller Genuine Draft Light. There's only one light beer with the big taste of Miller Genuine Draft. Cold filtered Genuine Draft Light.
Third period about to begin. No carryover power plays, but Alan Bester will be the goalkeeper for the Red Wings. Brian Murray has decided that Tim Chevelday has seen enough rubber for one night, and he will rest and be ready to go back in Detroit.
I would defy anybody to give one good reason why Tim Chevelday should stay in this hockey game. Makes no sense at all. Damage control time for the Detroit Red Wings. I think that's why Randy McKay and Bob Probert will see some ice on either side of Steve Yzerman, even though it's McKay and Primo starting on either side of Mark Abscheid.
Hall and Oates have 10 goals. The rest of the Blues have 7. So that aspect of The St. Louis performance in this series has not changed. And Yzerman and Fedorov have not scored since game number 1. Zombo in with a shot off Riendo. Big drive by McKay. Oh, and Riendo winced at that one, and then another shot comes through that's tipped to the boards. Cavallini stepped in too. Along with it is Stevens. Dumps it back off. Zombo puts the big crunch on Adam Oates. Red Wings have come out very aggressively here in the third to at least register that message for game 6. Not writing them off yet, but the Blues' dominance has been such that with a 4-goal lead here early in the third, with their skill at protecting a lead, and with the fact also that they're at home where they can really freewheel and get the line changes they want, it seems all but done. Across the goal now, sent wide. In goes Jeff Brown, wedged off though by Primo, stepped into by Chason. Chason able to step away with it. Off the skates of Randy McKay, tried to bat one out past Stevens. Second effort prevailed, and all the way down it goes. No icing.
It sure is a lot easier to look like the third best defensive team in the NHL when you're playing with a lead, and a sizable lead, than it is when you're playing from behind.
Sutter chased off. Racine locks him up, and across the way, Mark Potvin throwing some lefts at Dave Lowry. Lowry gets the helmet off, but he's worn a few in the process. And some more.
Now, you wouldn't guess that Mark Potvin is a second cousin of Dennis Potvin, would you? Finesse and fists.
All in the same family.
Even though Dennis could go pretty good when he was younger.
Early goings, third period. Couple of guys are going to rest in a 5-1 Blues advantage.
Each year, the experts at Car and Driver look at over 100 cars, so you don't have to. From the current new cars, they just picked their 10 best. At the most, you'll probably only buy one of them. That's too bad, because 2 of the 10 best are Mercury's. Mercury Sable and Mercury Tracer LTS. All this in the quality of a Mercury.
Potvin and Lowry with fighting majors at 1:18 of the period. We should update you on what little we know about Sergei Fedorov. It is a possible concussion, but one thing is for sure, as in the case of Chevrolet, who is not hurt, he will not be back for the rest of the night. Again, no point in taking any chances, because this is not the ultimate game for Detroit. It is the potential elimination game of the Blues. They have shown they won't let that happen tonight. Off the face-off, Yzerman. Racine behind. Tomlinson right after him. Puck worked back out for Yzerman. Moves ahead along with Bob Probert. Yzerman controls. Forehand shot just tapped to the glass by Garth Butcher. Just now getting up from the goal crease is Probert back down the ice, but we may have something else breaking out in neutral ice.
Bob Basson is there. Kevin Miller is there. They got tangled up in the corner, and you know who got tangled with them? Dan Maruelli. Maruelli ended up flat on his back. Miller and Basson kept jabbing at one another, and finally they dropped the gloves but never got started. Meanwhile, while that was going on, Steve Yzerman broke down to the St. Louis end, and while his shot was deflected, watch Bob Probert take Riendo out. No penalties at that end of the ice. They were called back near the Red Wings blue line.
Miller and Basson get unsportsmanlike conduct minor penalties at 133. Again, this is something that we really don't have the numbers to compare with last year. Fights overall have been down over the last 2 playoffs, but we're noticing far more coincidental penalties, such as we've seen just now, or unsportsmanlike conduct. And you've seen a good example tonight of how the linesmen have gotten in quickly on virtually anything that is about to break out. How much is fighting down? Well, about a third of what it was 3 years ago. So it's dropped 66% by rough calculation from 3 playoff years to now. High sticking call being signaled by Dan Maruelli.
I think it's going to be on Rich Sutter, and it looked to me as if Sutter's stick came up and hit Bob Probert high, maybe even in the face, but Probert never flinched. I thought it might have been waved off, but Dan Maruelli is going ahead and calling it. Rich Sutter is off. I think he made a motion to signify high sticking.
So Detroit to get its 6th consecutive power play. Detroit with 1 shot in the period, St. Louis with none. Overall, the Blues with 30 shots, and Detroit here early in the 3rd period with just 11. Racine and Crossman will be the point men. Up front, the Red Wings go with Probert, as well as Steve Yzerman. Also out Mark Habscheid. Racine moves in, fell down before Butcher could nail him, but here's Ron Wilson trying to get through. Crossman over for him, and a shoulder applied by Probert, and Wilson comes back with some of his own. Tomlinson able to work it back for Butcher, then across for Stevens. Fires one that has injured Wilson, and he comes directly to the bench. It is his hand that he seems to be favoring. Back up ice with it now comes Yzerman on the power play, tries to finesse by. Down he goes, and the puck picked up by Stevens and then carried behind. Yzerman has it underneath him and is trying to squirm loose and keep it in play, but the whistle blown and play is stopped. Yzerman asking for a minor and a 5-on-3 there. They won't get it.
Yves Racine had led this rush, and he stopped and bailed out when he saw Garth Butcher coming to him. Not a bad idea. Butcher was coming right at him. Some of the underdogs doing pretty well in the first round of this year's playoffs. One right here, the Detroit Red Wings. If you're wondering about the underdogs' chances to go all the way and win the Stanley Cup, in the last 20 years, only 5 teams have won the Stanley Cup with under 100 points. The lowest point total to win the Stanley Cup in the last 20 years, 87. That was in 1986 when Montreal knocked off Calgary. So you can see that the cup usually belongs to the elite. Detroit, coming into the playoffs, finished the regular season with 76 points. It's 11 points less than the lowest point total to win the cup in the last 20 years.
Well, you look at the 5 teams this year that had over 100. Calgary's getting a big scare. St. Louis has gotten one here, too. Paul Cavallini pivots, and again, this is shorthanded for St. Louis. Big shot by Jeff Brown, and Bester got a piece of that and just hangs on for a stoppage of play. Boston had a scare. Now they're up on Hartford, 3-2 in their series.
You mentioned the 5 teams that had 100 or more points, Mike. I mean, they have to be the favorites, but now Chicago's on the brink. They're down tonight. St. Louis, they're hurting. LA's hanging tough. Boston's hanging tough. Calgary's in trouble. Nobody had points in the 90s this year. Montreal with 89, then Pittsburgh, the Rangers, Buffalo, Washington, Edmonton right down to 80 points. And the bottom 5 teams to make the playoffs had 79, 76, 73, 68, and 65 points. And in that bunch, the Detroit Red Wings. But these teams are well under the lowest point total to win the Stanley Cup in the last 20 years. And you know what? You need help. I mean, in 1986, Montreal, who finished 7th overall, beat Calgary, who finished 6th overall. The top 5 teams had already been dusted before they made it to the finals.
Primo tried to get through, and Stevens shuttles that one back out. One thing you notice from looking to that, too, Minnesota, even with Chicago in games 1 and 2, but leading in Chicago tonight 5-0, shot by Primo went wide. Minnesota was next to last of those 16 teams in overall points in the regular season. Chase on a drive. Riendo hangs on. Primo went barreling to the front, and he and Stevens may go here. Just one shift earlier, when Primo came out onto the ice, he stood and talked in front of the St. Louis bench. The faceoff was right there, and he wheeled and talked to several players, including the coach, Brian Sutter. And so Primo has decided this is the time for him to assert himself.
Yeah, this has been a nasty series. It really has. I mean, both teams have attempted verbal intimidation every chance they've had. And if not intimidation, they've tried to antagonize verbally. Bob Probert has led the way really for Detroit. Garth Butcher and Scott Stevens have countered. Here's Primo's shot that looked like it deflected as it was heading to Riendo. Big shot by Steve Chason that also got a piece of somebody on the way to Riendo.
How about that number 16 team in your overall rankings, Vancouver? Well, they're playing tonight in Los Angeles. Let's go for an update.
At the Great Western Forum, Vancouver strikes first in a shorthanded situation. Trevor Linden finds Srt Louis, and Louis will backhand it past Kelly Rudy. 1-0 Canucks in the first.
So Vancouver continues to impress. They get the early lead in Los Angeles tonight. Srt Louis, we understand, has scored the goal for the Vancouver Canucks. We talk about some guys individually playing a little bit out of the character that you expected playoff time. Vancouver is showing so much more fire, and individual players. Cliff Ronning has come to the fore, who was never that type of player with St. Louis. Srt Louis, another one, a very skilled player.
It's easy to point a finger at Ron Caron, isn't it? Coming into tonight's game with St. Louis on the brink of elimination, you take a look at the guys out in Vancouver that were sent there from St. Louis at the trading deadline. They had figured in every goal coming into tonight's tilt. 17 total points in the playoffs for Courtnall, Ronning, and Momesso. Dan Quinn and Garth Butcher, well, they totaled 4, 2 goals and 2 assists. Hindsight's 20/20. I'm not pointing the finger at Ron Caron, but numbers tend to really jump up and point things out to you. And in this case, that trade really looks like it's helped Vancouver.
Here is Hull looking for his second. Blocked away by Bester. Hull just brought 17,842 to their collective feet, but Bester denied him. The 31st Blues shot of the night to Detroit's 14. 4-2 Detroit in this period in the shots on goal department. But all of those numbers meaningless when you look at the scoreboard. 5-1. Blues ahead. We welcome those of you from Canada who are watching on TSN, the sports network. Back in deep to get this is Garth Butcher, taken to the wall by Fedek long after he'd released it, but Detroit wanting to send a message that they're going to be following through on their checks as this series continues. Detroit scored first tonight, 2:12 into the first period, Bobby Dallas, but then came the Blues machine that had been dormant through the series. Boy, did they ever wheel. 5 goals, 3 in the second. Check that, 2 in the second and 3 in the first. And the 3 in the first came in less than 6 minutes time. Kevin Miller trying to finesse his way by, can't do it. Riendo just turns it aside. Featherstone lays it ahead to Adam Oates, who has a hat trick. Then along for Hull. Back for Oates, but it's by. 14:45 left in the third. Blues ahead here 5-1. Minnesota surprising Chicago again. 5-0 at last report there. We'll keep you updated on all of the action. And the reports from the other arenas. They are at the end of the second period at Chicago Stadium. Hull moving in. Checked by Racine. Extra man in is Probert. Falls over Hull, who gets up and plays it in front. Unable to reach that one, though, was Tomlinson. Blues continue the attack. A pass to Tomlinson, stepped into by Zombo. Along to get it is Racine. Racine just wedges it back up for Steve Yzerman again. Very deliberate 3-on-3, now just a 2-on-3 as the Red Wings are changing. Yzerman checked off by Paul Cavallini. Rich Sutter moving it back out. Taking it further is Basson. Watched there by Dallas and boom to the boards. Mark Hapscheid deep, tries to step away from Rich Sutter. Hapscheid has to hurry, but gets a little pass across to Garpenloff, whom we've not seen that much of. Garpenloff watched by Paul Cavallini. Poke checked away by Cavallini, and he got a good thump in on Garpenloff. Basson connects back up with Brindamore, moving along with Rich Sutter. Brindamore with a big spinorama move to Sutter, and a save made by Bester. Dan Marawelli has signaled a penalty. There'll be just one in a power play.
This is it.
There's only one light beer with the big taste of Miller Genuine Draft. Cold filtered Genuine Draft Light.
Yeah, we're gonna need some help up here, over.
All the confidence that had seemed to slip away from the St. Louis team, not only as a team, but all of the individual players a sure return on this one tonight with a 5-1 lead. Rod Brindamore spin around the move, only to be dragged down. He was tripped up by Doug Crossman, but got it to Rich Sutter for a good scoring chance on Bester. And here was a better one. I thought Hall was going to go high to the glove side, especially because Bester is so small. And if you ever saw the blade, Mike, of Brett Hall's stick, and you've seen it, it's tipped over like a 9-iron. So when he goes to the backhand, he is trying to elevate the puck the wrong way. Can you imagine trying to lift a golf ball into the air with a 9-iron, using it backwards the wrong way? That's what he does, and he did it too.
And in close. Kelly Chase. Well, there'll probably be a scrap here. And sure enough, there is. Now, we should mention to you that this is not a power play that has begun. We had thought there was a penalty call signaled by the referee. There wasn't before, but there will be plenty now.
Boy, Keith Primo's finally carved his way through that pile to end up tied up with somebody, but was that Bobby Dallas? Yeah, Bobby Dallas started it with Kelly Chase. Ooh, big right hand over Kevin Collins. Potvin's out there. Some beef. I got a feeling Maruella's going to start tossing guys here pretty soon, Mike, or giving them 10s at least, just so this thing doesn't get completely out of hand.
Yeah. Well, Primo and Featherstone. Featherstone with a right, and Primo was just trying to get back up and is back down. Undaunted by that, he's back on his feet. The linesmen have just come from escorting a couple of players off. Now Brindamore wants to get in the direction of Primo. And it's Jimmy Carson who's in the way.
Well, when Primo got up and Brindamore came by, it looked like he clipped him on the chin with a straight left.
For 30 minutes, the singers have sung, but now it's dancing time.
Ooh, here we go now. Look at this, Potvin and Marois. Mark Potvin and Mario Marois. Potvin went down first on that one. So if you're scoring takedowns or knockdowns, score 2 consecutive victories for St. Louis. One by Featherstone and one by Marois. That's usually how the fans judge it.
Oh, yes. Undoubtedly, there'll be more attempts at face saving here on the part of the Red Wings. We have 13:20 still to go in the third. 5-1 the Blues. Let's pause for this regional break. You're watching the crimson-stained ice of the Stanley Cup playoffs on Sports Channel.
Bayside Toyota means business. Through Sunday, purchase a new vehicle at Bayside Toyota and only $299 down delivered. Check out 1991 Corollas starting at $8,888 and 91 Camrys starting at only $10,988. Don't delay. We're dealing now. Bayside Toyota at the south end of Lake Union. That's Bayside Toyota, 382-2000.
On the power play, Rob Blake with the shot, deflected home by Luke Robitaille. Canucks and Kings are tied up at 1 apiece in the first period. Back to Mike Emmerich and Bill Clement.
Gloves everywhere, sticks everywhere, and blood in 3 different places on the ice, but this is how it all started. Kelly Chase, number 39 of St. Louis, and number 8, Bobby Dallas of the Red Wings. Keith Primo was in. Keith Primo really should have a third man in here coming to him.
Probably will, yeah.
Oh, did you see that poke by Featherstone? I had missed that in the original tangle. Featherstone stepped in and really drilled Keith Primo with the right and continued to try and nail him with the overhand left. No wonder Primo jumped through and kept trying to grab onto him.
Well, that's what they mean by a free-for-all.
Yeah, you better watch yourself when you get into the middle of one of those. You hope for good peripheral vision and quick reflexes when the punch comes. That time Primo looked like he never even saw it coming.
Well, Dan Maruelli is doing just as you suggested. He's going to send a few out for the rest of the night.
Yeah, he's calling. Who is he calling out? Primo looks like he's gone. Featherstone has already left. There was Mark Potvin now following Keith Primo. All right, get the bad boys off of the ice surface, and maybe we can get home before midnight on this one.
So 2 guys aside have exited right now, and if there is any more, you can bet that more will go, because Dan Marawelli would like to see this done before midnight Central Time. And especially since the scoreboard shows that this one appears to be academic. 13:20 to go in the third here at the arena in St. Louis. It's the Blues 5 and the Red Wings 1. Pause for this regional break. You're watching the Stanley Cup playoffs on Sports Channel.
Really beautiful.
Scenic valley.
Yeah, the great outdoors and beer. It's boring. This could be a boring commercial.
It's not a boring commercial. This is great.
Yawn City, population 1.
What do you mean 1? Where are you going? Come back here.
I'm leaving.
Trust me on this one.
See ya.
Would you come back?
Pretty cool, huh?
Okay, we'll go to the beach. We'll do it at the beach.
Just getting the penalties clarified here. We'll give them to you in a moment. The ice cleanup begins. And the guys who are loudly booed as they left the ice here will be roundly cheered 2 nights from now when they're out on the ice at Joe Louis Arena in Detroit. As noisy as this place has been, that one will be going too. So early in the evening, I mentioned this will be the toughest game the Red Wings will have in 2 years since they were up against the wall and eliminated by Chicago in 1989. I'm wrong. The toughest game will be 2 nights from now.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? The St. Louis Blues only lost 3 consecutive games once this season, and that was the last 3 regular season games in 1990. And they only lost 2 consecutive road games, back-to-back road games, once all season, and that was the second week of the schedule. So that's why everything appeared to be out of sync for St. Louis. When they walked into Detroit for games 3 and 4 and dropped them both, Brian Sutter knew that he had some problems that he had to iron out, but I'm not sure that he knew where to start looking for the answers, other than to just back to the same things that got them to where they ended up, on the strength of Hall and on the strength of Oates, and they have come through for them here, counting 4 of the 5 goals. But St. Louis appears to have regained a lot of the confidence that they had lost earlier in the series.
Dallas and Chase fighting majors only. Primo, Featherstone, Marois, and Potvin fighting majors and game misconducts. And it's important for future games that we note those are game misconducts and not just 10-minute ones, because in the playoffs you're only allowed 2. Well, we have another one here. You're allowed 2 before you get a suspension. That brandishing the stick across the way, Dan Quinn.
Well, when you got Dan Quinn and Kevin Miller getting ready to drop the gloves and go at it, you know you got a game that's out of hand. And here we go now. Finally, Randy McKay dropped the gloves and simply went after Garth Butcher. He said, "We've taken enough of your lip." Butcher's just grabbing on. He doesn't want any part of this scrap with Randy McKay. We'll see if he can get loose. Meanwhile, Bob Probert is out there, but Kevin Collins, one of the linesmen, is simply standing there holding Probert, and Randy McKay is trying to go to town on Garth Butcher. Oh, there's Butcher now with the left. Rope-a-dope. All right, while this fight is going on, Collins has escorted Probert to the penalty box and put him in the penalty box. And now Pat DiPuzzo, with help from Collins, has been able to celebrate. Oh boy, there's some kind of slip. Separate McKay and Butcher.
Quinn did not let go of the stick at all. Miller had dropped his gloves and stick. There's a hockey war of what's apparent one there. It might be Miller's, challenging Quinn's courage.
Each year, the experts at Car and Driver look at over 100 cars, so you don't have to. From the current new cars, they just picked their 10 best. At the most, you'll probably only buy one of them. That's too bad, because 2 of the 10 best are Mercury's. Mercury Sable and Mercury Tracer LTS. All this in the quality of a Mercury.
In Calgary, the Flames move ahead. Theo Fleury over to Kerry Wilson, his second goal of the game. Then 1 minute and 11 seconds later, Rick Natras with a weird angle shot. It hits off just about everybody. More importantly, it gets past Grant Fuhr. 4-2 Flames in the second.
No announcement on any penalties yet. 5-1, the Blues ahead here in the third period. Calgary has gone ahead of Edmonton, as you just noticed, by a score of 4-2. The North Stars hammering Chicago 5-0 at last report. That was at the end of 2. And Vancouver and the Los Angeles Kings were tied at 1 the last time we got word from that one. You'll be seeing some action from those games later on tonight, and here in the third, we get some more penalties in what has become a second half of the game that has seen all of the skirmishes that the whole series had not up until now.
Correctly, 10-minute misconducts to Quinn and to Kevin Miller. Well, I don't blame Danny Quinn for not dropping a stick. He took a bunch of stitches in the chin in the first period.
Sorry, we can't get these for you right away. The public address system here has to echo through the very tall roof and bounce back down to us, and by that time the information is pretty well scrambled.
Just like we're driving through a fast food drive-through and trying to get our order taken.
Fighting to Butcher and McKay, sort of an understatement, isn't it? Roughing and 10-minute misconducts to Probert and Lowry. Quinn and Miller get misconduct penalties. 10-minute misconduct penalties to Quinn and Miller. They've taken their places in the penalty box because we have 13:07 to go in the third, so they're not out of the game yet.
I'm trying to count the players on the Detroit bench. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players left on the Detroit bench. Remember, Fedorov left this game earlier, as did Brad McCrimmon. McCrimmon on a high sticking major. And with 4 Red Wings in the box and 5 skaters on the ice, I count 5 guys left on the bench.
Looks sort of like Albion Lumber against Acme Plumbing on Wednesday night, doesn't it?
Oh, those were great games.
Oh, I'll bet they were. We just have enough for one line change. That's it. Basson with a centering pass. That one spiked wide by Tomlinson, and kneeing right on top of him was Zombo. The net almost knocked away from behind. The water bottle goes flying to the corner. Why not? This just open chaos right now. This one flung into the seats. And so play gratefully stopped once again.
Well, guess what? St. Louis only has 5 players on their bench as well. I guess you got a pretty good chance of getting out there for the next shift when you're one of only 5 players sitting on the bench. The hitting has sure continued in front of the net, and that's something that Detroit really, you know, they're back to hitting now. I mean, they're out of the hockey game. It's 5-1, but remember, we commented a couple of times on how when St. Louis had taken the lead, the hit really was taken out of the Red Wings, but the hit has crept back in there, just given the tone of this game.
Shots are 4-3 in the period. Detroit, they're outgunned in the game. If you're just joining us, 33-14. They're trailing in the game 5-1, though leading in the series 3-1. Yzerman out for the draw with Adam Oates, who has a hat trick in the game tonight. Puck back to Stevens, then along to the turning Oates. Dropped one that went right into the shins of Habscheid. Takes the pass from Sean Burr, and Habscheid moving in. Pass tipped away by Stevens. Crossman able to flick it loose. Scott Stevens takes it back. Fedorov out with a possible concussion. Moving in is Gino Cavallini, and a shot tipped to the glass. Cavallini carried off behind. Still up with it, though. Back to Brown for a shot. That tipped loose, and then Hall shanked one wide of a vacated net. Out in front, Gino Cavallini turns it wide. Now Adam Oates for Hall. Score! Shaken by that one, but he doesn't want any help. He wants to stay in.
There has been no finer chemistry in the National Hockey League this season than the chemistry between Adam Oates and Brett Hall. 5 of the Blues' 6 goals have come from the sticks of Brett Hall and Adam Oates. Oates has 3, and now Brett Hall has his second one. Whenever Adam Oates ends up with the puck deep in the zone, Brett Hall is always moving. Somehow Adam Oates always knows where he is.
Masson floats it back in. 11:45 to go in the third period. Solid hit on Chason by Rich Sutter, and then Chason pulls Sutter down. Tomlinson gets up again thinking play is still on, but he didn't hear the whistle, and then an extra check from behind by Chason on Sutter, who goes down hard and will stay there. Zombo comes in to cut off Basson. Sutter stays down.
He took a pretty good lick. Might be a bit of a whiplash effect. Like he hyperextended his back when Chason hit him low. See that the trainer now is going for the lower back area. Well, this game's gotten downright ugly at this stage. There's the big hit right there. Big crunch cross check. Caught Rich Sutter by surprise.
Not much protection there. And not the advantage of knowing it was coming either.
You know, the linesman and the referee in this hockey game have done a pretty good job of trying to keep control. I mean, early in the tilt, even when play was going on, it's unheard of for the linesman to be continually jumping in between players, but that's what they were doing when Bob Probert was out there. When the play was going on, Collins was standing there pushing players apart. And when he had to here in the third, Maruelli has really expelled the guys that could cause the most trouble. More to come, though, I think.
Rich Sutter up on all fours. His older brother, Brian, the coach of the team, looking on from the bench. 6-1 here, midway in the third. Let's get an update now.
All right, thank you very much, Mike Emmerich. 6-1 in favor of the Blues in the third period. They will stay alive, and it looks like they'll move that series back to Detroit. Meanwhile, the Canucks and Kings going at it at the Great Western Forum, and Vancouver has moved ahead in this game. Cliff running with Kelly Rudy in the prone position. The Great One is known for goal scoring, but he can't stop Running's goal there in the first as Vancouver leads it by a 2-1 score. Meanwhile, Calgary leads Edmonton by a 4-2 score. This game is in period number 2. Here's Chris Cuthbert and Jim Poplinski.
Lifted his foot so that it wouldn't be offside right before Messier picked it up. And take a look at this strength. He has a step on McInnes. He gets that leg in front, one hand, and then he gets the rebound on his backhand. He keeps his eye on the puck, and with Vernon down, he bangs it in. What a great goal. Look at Messier fending off McInnes, and he's no slouch. Tries to go 5-hole on Vernon, and with Vernon down, Messier on his way by the net, he jams that in. And for somebody who says that Messier hasn't been a factor in this series, oh boy, I'd argue with him. And there he is putting his team within striking range again.
He was +3 going into this game. Norm McIver was the high on both teams at +4. And Messier now with his second goal of the series. 14:07 time of the goal, and they're looking for more as Murphy tries to break in. He was tied up by Suter. Otto takes his man to the boards. Flames squandered a 2-0 lead. It was 2-2. They went ahead 4-2, and now it's 4-3. Stefan Matteau on the move. Banned on his shot. They've now announced the scoring play. Messier from Simpson at 14:07. As Fuhr goes down and holds on, sticks come high, but they're quickly separated.
Let's go get it! There's only one light beer with the big taste of Miller Genuine Draft. Cold filtered Genuine Draft Light.
We're on our way.
Yeah, we'll be ready.
As you saw in Los Angeles, Cliff Ronning had made it 2-1 from Linden and Lume. Now here's the tying goal for LA with a 5-3 advantage. Luc Robitaille from Wayne Gretzky and Duchesne. 2-2 now the Canucks and the Kings still in the first in Inglewood.
4-3 here in the second, and with 2 assists tonight, Craig Simpson now takes over the series lead in scoring with 7 points. A goal and 6 assists for Simpson. He's usually the goal scorer, not the playmaker. Murphy. Through to Huddy. Jelena in front, and the pass was a bouncing one. Stern rides Jelena hard into the boards and goes down. And the puck flipped to center ice. Jelena a little slow getting to his feet. Told me today that after that high sticking penalty, here's Jelena trying to burst through. Knocked down again. He went into the Oilers dressing room, lifted weights, and rode the bike for 2 periods. He was so angry with the 5-minute major he took. They pile up in the corner, and we get another face-off. 22-12, the shots on goal. Flames lead by 1.
Inside your smooth-running engine is a torture chamber. And under these grueling conditions, only one leading motor oil meets the world's toughest requirements for viscosity breakdown. Castrol, the only leading motor oil that provides maximum protection against viscosity and thermal breakdown. So use Castrol. After all, why make things tougher on your engine? Castrol GTX, engineered for today's smaller cars.
How many body checks have we seen in this series? Martin Jelena putting the brakes on, and Stern not fooled. Jelena gets the worst of that collision. Ron Stern has taken a few hits himself. I don't know. These guys are kind of excited. Chris, it's nice to see the rest of your friends in the crowd tonight.
Patrick family here in full attendance.
I didn't want to say it.
4:25 left in the second period. Cleared in. Land keeps it in the zone. Now Wilson takes a look. Cross ice for Hunter. He's jostling with Lowe, and Munich came to help out. Entrance bumped by Land. At center ice, McCowan clears it back in. On the line of Wilson, Hunter and Reichel will do some forechecking. Matthews keeps it in at the point. Wilson chops it in front. There's Hunter, and what a toe stop by Fuhr. Jerry Wilson's been productive tonight. 2 goals, and he set up Hunter there. Ucille. Watched by Klima. There's the shot, and another great glove save. Oh, Grant Fuhr has had a big game in spite of the 4-3 deficit.
Calgary in front of Edmonton 4-3. If Edmonton goes on to win this series, Grant Fuhr has to be the MVP. He has been spectacular. More of the 1991 Stanley Cup playoffs after this timeout.
Bayside Toyota means business. Through Sunday, purchase a new vehicle at Bayside Toyota and only $299 down delivers. Check out 1991 Corollas starting at $8,888 and 91 Camrys starting at only $10,988. Don't delay. We're dealing now. Bayside Toyota at the south end of Lake Union. That's Bayside Toyota, 382-2000.
There's more to see on
you can see a lot more on cable for a whole lot less. Call 1-800-CABLE-91 today and get 3 months of both HBO and Showtime for only $12.95 a month. For box office hits, original movies, sports, comedy, and specials, don't miss this limited time offer. Call 1-800-CABLE-91, Showtime and HBO, and see more on cable TV.
Dysfunction, periodic.
What comes next, you may ask yourself. How can it change even more, you may wonder? It was only a few years ago, wasn't it, that television was just 4 channels? Today, thanks to cable technology, it's over 40. And while we may not watch them all, it's nice to have the option, isn't it? As it will soon be, being able to order up a movie, select a camera angle, or someday, maybe even a president, right from our living rooms. For some, maybe it's happening all too quickly. But for the rest of us, it's the future. A future that's being shaped today by a television company that already brings the world into more than 8 million homes all across the country, changing forever the way we see and understand, and bringing us tomorrow. Whatever in the world it is, tomorrow will bring.
Welcome back to our New York studios. I'm Bob Papa. In the game you're watching, the Blues lead the Red Wings 6-1 in the game right now in the third period, and the Blues just putting it on. Adam Oates with a hat trick in that game. Now, when you take a look at the Minnesota North Stars and Chicago Blackhawks, the series is tied at 2 games apiece, and you figure Chicago would have the advantage going back to Chicago Stadium, one of the loudest arenas in the league. But no, it's Minnesota taking it to the Blackhawks. At Chicago Stadium, here we go, first period. Blackhawks on the attack. Adam Creighton with a back wraparound, but he can't get it home. Late in the first, Minnesota will cash in on the power play. Brian Propp takes a Brian Bellows pass, 1-0 Stars. 32 seconds into the second, Minnesota will add yet another one. Brian Bellows feeds Mark Tenorti. Power play clicks, 2-0 Stars are in front. Second period action. And the Stars on the power play again. Bobby Smith bangs home the rebound. That makes it 4-0 now in the third period. A 5-0 score in favor of Minnesota. The Edmonton Oilers and Calgary Flames, second period. Calgary leads it by a 4-3 score. Mark Messier has gotten one back for Edmonton to pull to within 1. Kerry Wilson has a pair of goals for the Calgary Flames. And the Los Angeles Kings and the Vancouver Canucks end of the first period. Kings lead the Canucks by a 3-2 score. Mike Donnelly and Luc Robitaille scoring late to get the Kings in front in that one. Meanwhile, there is some other NHL news. The San Jose Sharks, who begin play in the 1991-92 season, have named George Kingston as their first ever head coach. The 51-year-old Kingston spent 1 season with the North Stars as an assistant. Prior to that, he was a longtime coach at the University of Calgary. Meanwhile, former Islanders Mike Bossy and Dennis Potvin had a list of 6 nominees for election into the Hockey Hall of Fame this year. Also nominated former Leafs standout center Bob Pulford. 3 veterans also nominated: former Leafs wing Bob Davidson, Bruins left wing Woody Dumont, and Rangers center Clint Smith. The veterans need 3/4 of the 12-man committee to gain election. All 3 modern players can get in, and they'll hold the dinner, the 31st dinner, the induction dinner, in Ottawa in September. Well, that's a look at the scores from our studios in New York. I'm Bob Papa. More of the 1991 Stanley Cup playoffs after this timeout on Sports Channel America.
Each year, the experts at Car and Driver look at over 100 cars, so you don't have to. From the current new cars, they just picked their 10 best. At the most, you'll probably only buy one of them. That's too bad, because 2 of the 10 best are Mercury's. Mercury Sable and Mercury Tracer LTS. All this in the quality of a Mercury.
You out all night long playing around?
Playing, Mama, playing.
Now you're always on the street.
On the road, Mama, on the road.